Ty hails from the city of Boston, Massachusetts, and embarked on his journey into the media world at an early age. A UFO sighting when he was 10 years old of a classic disc-shaped craft with 3 prominent spheres on the bottom was a life-changing event and inspired his lifelong curiosity about the unknown. His passion for the industry was ignited during his volunteer work at Billerica Access TV, and fueled by the experience, pursued formal education in film and collaborated with Showcase Cinemas, interviewing high-profile actors and directors for engaging segments. In 2019, he took a leap into the world of podcasting with the Pop Culture Corner podcast, where he explored the untapped potential of the medium in his interviews with actors. The profound personal loss of his mother led him to explore the realms of the unexplained and resulted in Total Disclosure, a new podcast dedicated to his mother's memory and his quest for personal truth in a world seeking its own revelations. With public attention reaching unprecedented levels of the past few years, Ty has committed himself to pursuing the larger mysteries and questions that shape our understanding of the world. Through Total Disclosure, he endeavors to contribute to that global conversation. Please welcome Ty Roberts.
So we're going to do this a little differently than I assume has been done throughout this weekend. I was asked to do this. I don't really usually do lectures. I'm a podcaster. I like talking to people, but forgive me, I'm not used to doing it in person. So if I break here and there, it's not for lack of trying. I decided, like he said in the intro, that, after my mother passed away, it kind of realigned my vision. And I was kind of miserable in Hollywood. I hated what I was doing. I hated the people I was with and the environment. And when I lost my mother, there was an event that happened inside the room that recalibrated me, if you will, and it has sent me down the path that is Total Disclosure. So one of my first guests, one of my mentors in the field, someone who's been fighting so long for disclosure, for the truth embargo, I thought, who better to be up here today than Steve Bassett. Thank you, Steve. You can come on up now. So, like I said, Steve has been really imperative to the disclosure movement. He works tirelessly. I don't know if any of you know his day-to-day, but it is staggeringly busy in DC. And with growing turmoil, it must be getting pretty hard.
It's like taking a boat ride in a Category 4 hurricane. You have to work a lot harder. But it is happening, and there's things unfolding that...
Right.
How can I put it?
Well, I'll formally...
I got to get closer to the mic.
Yeah, you got to...
Okay, look.
You got to pull that thing up, baby.
If you put aside just all the other things that are happening, and there's so much, and just focus on what's happening with this issue, on paper, we are almost there. Very, very close. But it's so hard to say, yeah, and that's what's going to happen because something really crazy is going to take place the next day. Okay, fine. But that's history. But boy, we have the UAP Disclosure Act is going to be submitted again, could pass. We're about to have like the 9th hearing, but the 3rd very strong hearing just in a few days, September 9. We've got witnesses coming forward, so many it's hard to really get caught up. We have members of the administration speaking publicly to the issue, and I mean high-level members, Vice President, national security director, and so forth. We have a number of members of Congress that are like going out of their way to show how committed they are to getting this truth out,
Yep.
right? Such as Burleson, who said just recently,
Yeah.
I'm committed, we're going to get this out.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't realize, and I'll get to the formal questioning in a moment, but you know, you've been working, I was at both hearings, you were at both hearings. You've been working so diligently on the back end, and I don't think people get to really understand and really realize what you've done behind the scenes, because if it wasn't for Steve, Grush wouldn't be there. If it wasn't for Steve and guys like him, no one would be testifying in front of Congress, because this subject has been ridiculed, stigmatized, and just made to look stupid for so long. But my generation is coming up in a world that, you know, we see the cosmos as teeming with life, and that is the obvious answer. So the tides are changing. The burden of proof has shifted from the believer to the non-believer. And you've spent decades pushing for government transparency on UFOs. So where do we stand today in that fight for disclosure compared to maybe when you first began?
Well, first let me put a qualifier. If it wasn't for a lot of people, believe me, I'm just one of a very large group of people that have been working in countless ways for 80 years to get us to this point. Let's put it this way. We had to have the researchers. We had to have witnesses willing to come forward. We had to do our own journalism, right? Write our own articles. We had to create the conferences. All of this total package is what's helped get us to the point where in, let's see, when was it? In 2023, we had the first real hearing since 1968.
Right.
In the last 7 years, more coverage of this issue has taken place, way more coverage of this issue in U.S. media than in any previous time. It's overwhelming because I archive it all. I mean, I archive all the professional media on my website, the Print Media Archive. And if you were to read all 7,000 of the last articles that are listed there, you will find 1 in 200 is a skeptical take, right? Because I include those if it's professional journalism. So what, right? Meanwhile, the term UFO, which we've spent years to replace with UAP, because you can't talk to journalists and members of Congress and start mentioning UFO. Nothing wrong with it, except, of course, that it's been deliberately stigmatized by the managers of the truth embargo. I called it the intellectual ghettoization of ufology, where they build walls around you, but they're not brick, thank God, but they're ridicule, walls of ridicule, right?
Yes.
And so you're in there, and once you're behind those walls of ridicule, everybody take a shot at you. So UFO had to be changed, and other language had to be changed, which we did, okay? What's happened struck me is that in the last, well, maybe starting about 2019, it started to shift. And now UFO is back. It's back. And so a member of Congress will say UFO. A journalist writing an article, UFO. And I'm going, wow, how did that happen? Okay? And so if I'm working, I'm a manager of the truth embargo sitting over at the DIA or Lockheed Martin or wherever the hell, and I'm watching this and I'm going, oh God, UFO is back. What are we going to do? Or to put it another way, I think that everybody connected to this issue within our government and within the private sector, who they're not evil, and I'm not trying to throw shade on them. They were doing what they were doing. It was all national security based. Every one of those people are looking out and seeing this is almost over. And it's going to come out, and we're going to answer a lot of questions about what we did and how it went and so forth. And that's from government all the way to the private sector. And they would rather not have to do that, but hey, life is that way. Sometimes you're going to have to deal with things like that. And they're kind of getting themselves prepared. But in the meantime, they're buying a little time. But I've always said this, but never more than now, disclosure, capital D, a confirmation from the heads of states of nations that, yeah, we're not alone. they're here, so forth, and you're going to learn more, is inevitable. It has always been inevitable.
Do you think that it is inevitable? It is inevitable. Do you? I mean, even the word alien, if you will, has been changed in public, the public sector and the public legislation to non-human intelligence. So they're creating new words and new phrases for old ideas to kind of shoehorn these things into legislation. And we have worked with Eric Burleson, the congressman, who has now reintroduced as a single package deal, the Disclosure Act. Eric Burleson just reintroduced it.
Well, Eric Burleson, who is my new favorite congressman.
And by the way, I briefed Nancy Mace with him, with Robert Salas. He said that about her then. So Steve's very, very vocal about his changing opinion.
Mama didn't raise no fool. But Nancy had to step back, and Luna stepped in. And again, think about that. One of the Congress people that was out there saying, again, she was saying matter-of-fact things. We're going to get this.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, 40 years ago, if a congressperson had said that, I'd have had a heart attack, right? So she gave it to Luna. Luna then became the head of the task force on secrets. All right, which was what they did was they created an actual task force that included UAPs. And so now the hearings are before the task force. This is how things progress in Congress, right?
Absolutely.
It gets its own task force. They're holding a hearing. And once you get to that level, anybody that knows, the government knows, this is not going to go well in terms of the secrets, right? It's going to go well. And so, but she got overwhelmed because there's so many secrets, right? So many files.
Very many.
That and we know some of those files are going to be very interesting. And so she offloaded the UAP portfolio to Burleson, who took it up with gusto, okay? But I need another little clarification. Language is very important. Here's a quick tutorial. Okay. Alien, bad. We don't want to use alien. Obviously, the film industry does, but in terms of the legislation and politics and so forth, we don't want to use alien. That is for something else, okay? It has a lot of negative consequences, and it's certainly, if you've seen all the alien movies, yeah, it's definitely a little negative. But whatever. No, extraterrestrial preferred. Now, extraterrestrial, still a little bit dicey for some because they're not sure if they're from another planet, and it's very hard to pronounce, a lot of syllables, and so it can be a problem, but extraterrestrial's all right. But where we kind of settled, and again, this is how language is important to getting politics and policy done, because you have to get people involved, and they need language they're comfortable with, and if they're not comfortable with what's out there, you give them something that is comfortable.
Right.
And so where we are now, technologically advanced non-humans.
Yeah, and I think, there's this idea that most in here would probably agree to, that you think disclosure will happen when the president opens the doors of the White House, comes out onto a pedestal and says, my fellow Americans, we are not alone. I don't think disclosure looks like that right now, because I don't think he or she has to come out and say we're not alone. That's the given now. So what does disclosure actually look like now?
Did you go to my lecture yesterday? You were there for that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, let me remind you, and this is very simple. All right, again, language. One of the reasons, that's what I do. I speak to people and try to provide context that helps. That's why I've done more interviews on this subject than anybody.
Literally.
Anybody ever, including Stanton Friedman and the works.
He won't turn
because
an
that's
interview
all I
down.
do. And the podcast revolution. Thank God for that. And so I'm up in the 1,500, 1,600 interview range. Okay. So one of the things that I pound away on is this, language. So disclosure, as I use it, not most of the time, is a proper noun. It is capital D disclosure. I defined it, which means I'm always right. Anybody that has another definition, fine. I created the definition, okay? So sorry, case closed. Disclosure is when a head of state, it will start with one, confirms we're not alone, formally, as the head of state. Now, again, people say, well, what does it matter? It matters. We've had couple of astronauts said we're not alone. Edgar Mitchell said it many times. He walked on the moon. Are we in a fully post-disclosure era where we're learning about this and learning? No, because the head of state is the commander of the army, right? We know that. It's commander-in-chief. He has total classification capability. There's nothing that the head of state technically just can't do. Go get it. Open this door, open that door. Now somebody may say, now you can't come in, and then they haul that person off to a prison. And so, and also it gives it the gravitas and the importance that it needs to have. It opens the doors. The way I've finally found the metaphor for this, I'm big on metaphors, I love them, is that disclosure, capital D, the moment, hopefully our president, and not another head of state, because I'm telling you, if another head of state does this, it's not good, steps into the White House, he's not going to do it from a Denny's, okay? He's going to do it in the White House, except because of a certain special time we're in, and other things that have developed, I have stated publicly now that it could happen on Joe Rogan. So if the head of state goes on Joe Rogan and announces it, it's the same thing as doing in the Oval Office. Now, that says a lot about where we are and Joe Rogan, but that would be enough. It's the master key. The moment those words come out of that president's mouth, he has just given everybody the master key to 1,000 doors that have been locked for the last 80 years about this, that, and everything else. And you can't even go deal with them because you can't open that door. And suddenly the disclosure is the master key. And various people in politics and elsewhere in journalism are going to say, I'm going to take that key, they're going to open that door and that door. And for the rest of your lives, you are going to be dealing with the next stuff behind the next door. So that's disclosure, capital D. It can only be. Now, small d disclosure is the process in which the stuff's coming out. Richard Dolan writes a book,
UFO.
That's small d disclosure,
yeah.
Right? A witness comes forward and says, hey, this is what happened to me, small d disclosure, and so forth. That's happening all the time, and it will continue. But the confusion there is mixing, I guess you could say, research and process with politics, and in a sense, events. I mean, I don't really have the name for that, but it's one thing to find out something new and write a book. It's another thing for the head of the most powerful nation in the world to come out and tell you we're not alone. That is what I've been trying to do. And it's okay. It is confused. I could have picked the word confirmation. Okay, and with a capital C. But I said, that's got some religious connotations. They're going to confuse that with the Catholic confirmation or whatever the hell. And so I said, no, we're going to go with that. I'm going to stick with something we know. When I say disclosure is inevitable, I'm not saying it's inevitable that we'll be riding in an anti-gravitic ship in a couple of years. I'm saying it is inevitable that a head of state is going to come out and say this, and we're going to enter that world. And it's either going to be our president or it's going to be another president, and there's about 8 or 9 on that list, including all the nuclear nations, which includes China and Russia and the UK, Israel, okay, so forth, and Pakistan. If one of those heads of state comes out and says it, that's it. And while we may hold back, maybe our president says, no. It explodes. And that head of state, whether it's Pakistan or Xi Jinping or Putin, has just triggered one of the most profound events, if not the most profound event in human history, will be thought of as the great truth teller. Will get a Nobel Prize and go down in history in a way that even Genghis Khan might admire. And that's hanging out there. Who is going to take that brass ring? I would prefer it was the President of the United States, the one that's in the White House now.
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Now, some would argue that the government is preparing us slowly through a controlled disclosure. Do you believe there is a drip feed strategy in that they are trying to get the world ready for that day? Or do you think that it's being forced upon them from...
It's more complicated than that, I think. The extraterrestrial activities, particularly in the last 80 years, has clearly advanced this issue. They're constantly being seen, right? If you don't want to have the people of the world know you're here, cloak, right? Of course they can cloak. And they're being seen all the time. They start, not just a few times, but many times, because the research is not fully out there, but in Westall and Ruah, they land next to schoolyards, the actual physical craft, and get out. And the school kids come running over. Of
Yeah.
course they are, right? And then there's a couple of, extraterrestrials and the school kids, and they're putting images in their heads. And those images, and this gets into another subject, not going to go there because it's a 4-hour lecture. I've had my time. The images are like, things are going to go real bad, kids. And then those kids take that with them through the rest of their life. Some suffered from it, others was interesting. But the message got out. Westall was studied. The Ruah's got a documentary. So if you don't want people to know about you, you don't land next to schoolyards. Also, they've taken thousands of people as part of the contactee phenomena. I don't talk about it in a political sense. I don't talk about it to Congress. It has to stay over here in the side table. We can't go in the door with that. You don't want to go to the New York Times and interview and say, let's talk about contactees. Is it fair? No, it's not. They should have been heard a long time ago, but let's face it, we've got to do with what works. But the number of contactees may be in the millions. You may or may not know, there's been 500,000 at least written reports sent to researchers who, because they couldn't send it anywhere, they at least wanted the researcher to know, Hopkins and Whitley Strieber and others, This is what happened to me, I just want you to know. 500,000 of them. And so because those that read those things know a great deal about what's going on with this issue. And so guess what? Around late 1980s, all of a sudden, contactees started remembering. Apparently before that, they couldn't. And then all the memories are just coming out. And then they started going, hey, wow. And then they go to a therapist and they're doing regressions and more memories are coming out. If you're at ET and you really don't want us to act on this and know we're here, you don't let those memories come out.
Yes.
You continue to block them forever. So the ETs are helping. But let me tell you something. In terms of disclosure, the American people and the world's people are the ones that deserve the most credit. The people have stepped into this around the world. I've spoken in, 25 countries. We know what's happening. But in America, we've dominated because we have been the dominant interaction because of the ETs, because we were the first ones to get the atomic bomb, and we actually dropped the damn things. And we are the technological leader in the world, certainly, a little less now. And so we've been going to have to focus. But let me tell you, the number of millions of people that have helped get us here to where we are is large. So I give y'all the most credit, all right? And so control disclosure, let me clear that up, it's a language issue, all right?
Okay.
Control disclosure, little awkward, but in the Disclosure Act, they refer to the controlled disclosure. And so immediately people jumped up, yeah, I knew it, you're controlling the whole thing. No, the reason they used the word controlled disclosure, because the process that the Act is describing, in which everything comes forward, gets reviewed, advanced to the archives, is going to be in a controlled process. They're really talking about controlled post-disclosure, meaning, look, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it responsibly. We're just not going to haul a bunch of saucers out on the White House lawn and let you come and look at them, right? We're not going to be throwing the tech up on the net.
Why not?
We're going to do it in a controlled way. And so, again, there's an example of language creating issues, and my job is to heal that.
Right.
I'm a doctor.
Let's say tomorrow, Donald Trump steps up and announces, we are not alone. The way you described a true capital D disclosure. I mean, what happens next in politics? What happens in religion, science, culture? What does our daily lives change for?
Well, he will have launched in that moment the greatest streaming series of all time. It's going to win 1,000 Emmys. Okay, it's going to have 1,000 episodes, and you're going to be able to watch them all, even if you don't want to. It's just going to be everywhere. He will have triggered the most extraordinary period probably in human history, even greater than when 3,000 years ago they're hanging out in Egypt helping the pyramids be built, but they were just gods back then. And what did people know? The implications of it was kind of cool. It made Ancient Aliens one of the greatest shows of all time. But no. We're spacefaring advanced civilization now. We've already gone to the moon. We want to go to Mars, apparently, according to Elon. And so disclosure at this time, totally different. In other words, I could be wrong, but before open contact, open contact, not to help us build the pyramids, but to discuss how we're going to conduct our affairs so that we can be part of possibly the Galactic Federation, whatever the hell they call it. That is where this is going, because they're advanced spacefaring civilization. We're just about to be advanced in spacefaring civilization. We're kind of violent. We like to nuke people. So it's time to kind of get together to see what's going on and say, look, we want you to come out with us, but you got to clean up your act. That's kind of where things are going here. And so when those words come out, and Danny Sheehan, because of all those Harvard degrees, says it better than I do, but he gets really elaborate stuff. But Danny Sheehan is the new world expert right now in terms of how things are going to go. I keep it simple, all right? At that moment, we are now on an entire new trajectory. If I was 15 years old, oh God, it would be fantastic. If you're in here and you're 15 years old, let me tell you, you're going to have a great time. So it's a trajectory that is going to take us probably into a true spacefaring civilization, and hopefully be able to change certain behaviors so that we can get there in one piece. I don't know how it's going to play out, but when you think about it, you've got these ideas of interacting hopefully in open contact with ETs. You're talking about the possibility of new technologies, revolutionary technologies in this world as you're going forward, and so the whole world is going to be kind of, their brains are like on fire. What could happen? Where is it going? Wow, what's going to go? And so, and then because all of this now can be shared through the internet, and everybody's got a 70-inch TV now. By the way, if you don't have a big TV, you got to get one now. Get down to Costco. They're always going to be on sale. Get the biggest damn TV you can. It's because you do not want to watch this on a computer screen. You want to watch this play out on 74, 80 inches. You're going to watch the world transform literally in real time. I cannot even describe how many things are going to be happening and how many things are going to be engaged. Because once that event takes place, it doesn't open a couple of doors and then they open a couple of more. It basically offers the ability to open up 1,000 doors that's going to change the entire world over a very relatively short period of time. That is a relatively crude way of trying to say what's going to happen, and I believe that the vast majority of it will be quite pleasant, quite good, quite positive. It's going to be difficult to demonize this thing. And again, I say demons. Some religious people see them a little concerned. They might be demons. They're not, but I get it. Bad language. It's going to be difficult, though, to really make it crass or make it evil or what have you. Because the evidence, a huge amount of evidence that we've established regarding the ET presence, what they're like, how they think, how they act. We know a lot more than you may know. It's substantial. It says it's not being taught at Harvard. It's not being covered fully in the news, but we know a great deal thanks to the work of a lot of people. And overall, the ETs are pretty cool. They're okay. They're not bad. They do a couple of things I'm not crazy about, but compared to human behavior, when we want to behave bad, they're not even in the ballpark. In other words, we are the threat right now, not them. So that's kind of, and I want that new era to begin within a couple of months, if you don't mind, Mr. President. Let's get this going. A couple of months, no problem.
Because I'm not sure if everybody in the room knows or has done as much research. I'm sure they have. But during the days of George Bush Sr., they did commission a private think tank that Hal Puthoff was part of. And what they essentially asked this think tank to do was come up with a 1 through 10 number. Is disclosure of the non-human intelligence going to be positive or negative? So 0 would be, no impact. 10 would be destabilization. That think tank, just 20 years ago came up with the suggestion that they do not disclose because it would destabilize our religions, our economy, and There's
How
gotta be a way-
convenient, though. How convenient.
And that's what I-
Okay. In other words, they're doing a survey of the people who have a substantial vested interest and not do it, and ask them, what do you think? So they said no. I get it.
And that's the problem. They're asking these, they're bringing, people are double dipping, and it's a real problem in the UFO community that I see is, and I don't mean to bash on Hal Puthoff specifically or guys like Eric Davis, but they know so much, yet why aren't they being subpoenaed to Congress? Why aren't they being demanded? Listen, tell us what you know. Let's get this going. Eric Davis was just in Congress. Why are we not talking about the obvious memo that would confirm all of our beliefs?
I mean, you want to be an activist? You're a podcaster. You can't be an activist. You can't be both of those things.
It really aggravates me how, because during the David Grush interview, his testimony, you guys might remember that the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial was going on. Can you guess which one got more coverage?
We got Johnny Depp into this. How about that's pretty good.
Yeah,
right?
What a good distraction. It just seems like every time we get close to disclosure, the left hand goes, oh, look what I got.
A certain amount of that is orchestrated. Most of it is just circumstantial, the odd war here, whatever. But I think here is what I would say about what you just said. I get it. First of all, if you can appreciate how complicated and difficult this is, it's not like trying to get some part of the government to confess the fact that they, maybe massage some figures in a report. This is what's the word? A transcendent thing that's happening.
Ontological.
That has been contained for 80 years, not just a few years, because of incredibly significant aspects of it. And this is one of the things that I didn't get into the other day, but it turns out there is a very significant connection between the ET presence in the first place and the use of nuclear bombs by us initially, actually dropping them on human beings. We're the only country that's done that. And also the ET, I think, agenda, in a sense. There's actually a connection there. This is big. And the other thing that makes it super big is that the national security state that we're in, sort of, and the issues involved are not just, we have our issues, we have the odd war over border or something. No. Unless you're older than 79, you have lived every second of your life under a nuclear threat, under mutual assured destruction. You may not have known it when you were a kid, but that's kind of it. Every moment of your life we have lived where at some point somebody makes a mistake, got up the wrong side of the bed, leaned against the wrong switch or whatever, and launches a couple of nukes, and it's like they can't, oopsie, so sorry, or deliberately. And that's it. All of a sudden, they're flying. We've seen movies about this. We know about it. It's in our dreams. We've adapted to it. We've normalized it. But, however much you've normalized it, if those missiles fly, it's not going to be, well, I was expecting this. Well, let's have a drink and finish this up. No, you've been living under that. Once you talk about something like this, which is going to come out, at the same time, we're still under an endless nuclear threat. The idea that you have to be careful and compromise, or you can't say this and you can't say that, is not hard to deal with. So when I see these things happening, I don't get upset with the people that are involved. I'm not upset because they didn't go further or they did this or did that. I look at the broader picture and I say, in the broader sense, where are we going? Well, we're heading toward disclosure. And so David Grush has made his contribution and other people have made their contributions. And so, why don't we subpoena them? Because this issue almost requires a significant amount of assistance from people inside. We need their cooperation as well. We don't have to beat the doors down of the Pentagon. We need some help on the inside. You start subpoenaing people, and you're pushing them away. And so my thing is to keep it together, keep it moving forward. Again, this is the activist perspective that I do my best to provide, so that some sort of balance can be held to get the job done. Activism is getting to where you have to go, getting the prize. It's not some particular way where you run over people, because that may not work. You want to pick the path that gets you the prize. And I believe in this circumstance, it's encouraging cooperation, not trolling people, not attacking anybody, but simply describing where we can go together until enough people are going there and you get there. And so that's why I don't get too problematic about that. There's thousands and thousands of people now engaging this issue in some way or another. Some are a little difficult, some are a little off here, but the totality of the people engaging it is extremely looks extremely promising.
Yeah, and you and I have been really lucky. After the hearing that we just had in November, I had a meeting already scheduled with Nancy Mace, and Bob Salas was there. And if you guys know, Bob is the main witness in the 1967 Malmstrom incident. And, you know, I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I stepped aside, and instead of interviewing Nancy Mace about the hearing that she just chaired, I allowed Bob Salas to brief her, an active sitting member of Congress, about the 67 Malmstrom.
For the very first time.
For the very first time.
And you invited me.
And I invited you.
And you will always be on my Christmas list.
Yeah. So our members of Congress, they know that these craft have been seen over our facilities, over our nuclear facilities, our most sensitive facilities. And they have the capability to just switch it off, switch every, you know, we may think the nuclear arsenal is the pinnacle of the weaponry, but to them it just seems like child's play, and they can shut it off whenever they want, but they want us to know this.
This is one of the most important, this may be the most important aspect of this, and on podcasts, I go there at length, right? That's why they're all 2 hours long. Really, very basically, the connection between the ETs and the nuclear weapons may be at the heart of the thing, near the center. In other words, they shut our missiles down in the 60s. Apparently the first event was 66, then 67. After that, the Air Force is going, well, this is really a problem. And so there were future events, but the Air Force just locked it down, right? Whatever the hell they did. And so you don't know too much about that. But researchers that went to Russia, and a number of people have gone to Russia and done good research, have in documents they found there, confirmed that apparently they shut some missiles down in the Soviet Union as well, okay? Yeah. And then there's records showing that on 2 occasions at least, in the U.S. and once in the Soviet Union, and this is in the book UFOs and Nukes, the most important book on this on this issue.
It's a dry read.
Robert Hastings, he's still here. He needs to get a prize. Somebody should give him a prize. That they turn them on, meaning they set them into launch mode. And so the guys down in the silo are, you know, having a ham sandwich, kind of chilling, nothing much happening, and all of a sudden they look over and they're going, I think that's launch mode.
Why are those
what the
armed?
hell? And there's like a sequence they got to do. Yeah, this, that, and they can fuel the missile and everything else. And they're going, that's not good, because if that goes all the way to the top, these things are going to launch. And that's going to be awful on my resume. We didn't even turn the keys. So they are absolutely in terror. And it goes all the way up to the point where the next thing launches the missiles.
They're about to start World War III.
Now, it's not known whether we have witnesses to a craft over. I assume there must have been a craft over there. So in any event, they turned them on. But they don't have to have done that. They've done this. Okay, so what in the hell is going on? Well, we have a lot of ideas about that. But from the standpoint of the Department of Defense, the shutdown of the nuclear missiles is the most problematic thing they've ever done. They could abduct every single one of you tomorrow, take you to a picnic somewhere, have a good party. They could care less. This is another matter. Why? Because if this really becomes out, and it's now getting out, but boy, they've been trying to get it out since 1994, so that's 30 years. The people are going to learn they can shut down our nukes. It's going to be formalized. It's going to be accepted. Yeah, it happened. And if you're the Department of Defense, you do not want the American people knowing that you can't do a damn thing about having your nukes shut down. That's the ultimate emasculation of the defense world.
Because there is a social like a contract that we, you know, I'll pay my taxes, you keep me safe, and if they flatline on their part and say, we can't keep you safe from whatever this is, it doesn't have to be aliens, it doesn't have to, it could be future humans for all we know.
That's bad.
But we can't do anything about it. They can fly with impunity over any place they want at any time, and there's nothing we can do. when that gets admitted, why do I pay my taxes? You can't do anything for me. That's a real problem.
That's true. That's true. But people that follow the issue and know something about the phenomenon and the history, it's common sense that there's nothing we can do about it. They're advanced species, interstellar, I believe, and if they can do anything they want. So you sort of know that. But the nuclear shutdown formalizes it.
Yes.
It makes it real. It makes it substantive. And so they have done everything they can to not let that get into a congressional hearing. And for 30 years, Bob Salas is trying to do this, and he and his other fellow command officers. And again, this is the creme de la creme. Okay? These are Air Force officers whose psychological stability is such
Paramount.
that they are granted the privilege to run or be part of a two-man silo command where if the codes come through for the president, they are going to turn those switches. And if the two decide to do it because, they're pissed off with society or their life's not going well, that's not good. And so they're absolutely rock solid. And so when those guys started coming forward and say, look, they turned our missiles off and you need to know this. We need to get this out there. The Department of Defense is going, that can't happen. And so since '94 and the UFOs and Nukes books, plus the documentary, they have never been able to testify in Congress.
Yes.
They have been ignored. How I put it is this. When the DOD realized that Salas wasn't going to go away and they weren't going to kill him, and he had 4 or 5 other nuke officers that were ready to back him up, and they knew about all the security guys, the younger guys who were officers, they were up top, trying to protect him, and they're seeing the damn craft, and they're all running around in circles, scared to death. Afterwards, after one of the events, they found one of the security guys balled up in a corner, right, literally shaking. Those guys have never come forward, but they could. They're younger. They're still around. And so they're going, that cannot happen. And so over the last 30 years, a major book, a major documentary, 4 books actually, 2 press conferences at the National Press Club, okay, and anything else they could do to get this forward. It hasn't worked. Why? Because the Department of Defense policy on this, so here's what they decided to do. We can't kill them. We can't disgrace them. Can't make them disappear. So we'll ghost them.
Yep.
And so they ghosted him, meaning, I don't know, never heard of you, don't know who these people are, a ridiculous question, don't say anything, right? And hope that the media will go along. And the media basically did go along, but they made little progress every year. This has been a 34-year battle chess game between the most important witnesses ever and the U.S. government's policy. And guess what? They're about to have their day. We're really close. Mace said she would like to have the nuclear witnesses. Burleson is like to have the nuclear witnesses. That has been my #1 project for the last 6 months. Every single member of the Oversight Committee, every single member office, rather, of the the Senate Intelligence Committee has gotten from me 2 hard copies of their witness statements and affidavits, as well as the links to the book, UFOs and Nukes, and the documentary, and so forth. All of that is in their offices, and I also sent an electronic version of that. And so it's now there. It's in play. And I think they're close to bringing them. But again, and they're ready to testify tomorrow. They'd go in a skiff tomorrow and testify the next day. They understand that these witnesses, it's kind of ball game. So they're trying to get a little more out there and set the stage. But watch for this. If you hear there's going to be a hearing and the witnesses are announced, and Bob Salas or David Schindele or Robert Jameson or Bob Jacobs, who's another nuclear tampering
Mario
witness, Mario Woods, if they are in the mix, then Bo, you need to get the champagne in and get ready to party.
You know what I find to be really interesting, and the Exeter event actually ties into this. So I am heavily, as you know, the nuclear the topic of the connection between UFOs and nukes is something that it just won't go away. It will not, in my head, it won't go away. And I've started to see these themes because I've interviewed Bob and Dave and all these people, and every time, so if you look at the Salas case, if you look at the Shindeli case, if you look at Mario Woods' case, if you look at the Exeter case, there's always nuclear material, because the Pease Air Force Base also had nuclear material. And then there's this red, orange orb, or orbs, and that are doing whatever they're doing. So there's these common threads along all these cases as well. And Exeter happens to be fit right into the mold of those other ones. And I just wonder, like you said, I think if they put those nuclear witnesses up there, and if the country is able to watch and listen to their testimony, and if their stomach isn't turning by the end of it, then they probably don't have a vested interest in national security.
Okay. But let me say this. If you wonder why I'm so worked up, right, passionate about this, committed to this, right, because in my first half of my life, I didn't get passionate or committed to much of anything. It was a problem. But now, oh yeah, I'm there. Better late than never. It's this. If you look at the sum of the evidence, right, which includes, of course, all of the nuclear shutdown events, all the schoolyard events, and many of the accounts of contactees that tell you what they experienced up in the ship, which getting messages in the head, right, showing them destruction and other things. If you look at it all, it's hard not to conclude that one of the objectives for their presence is not just making hybrid kids that are going to live a great life on another planet somewhere, but to getting us past the nuclear weapons issue and getting rid of them. Because obviously, why waste a perfectly nice civilization that took billions of years to get to, or whatever? Or you can't be part of our world if you've got the nukes. Because if you do, you're going to build a starship, fill it up with nukes, and cruise on out and do something stupid, like nuke another primitive society somewhere. And so I believe what we're seeing is, if we can complete this is the pathway that would result in no nukes in any country on this planet. That doesn't mean everybody's happy with each other. It doesn't mean they're not firing some, rockets or something. It's just no nukes on this planet within 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that means we're no longer living under mutual assured destruction. And maybe other things will come from that. Think of that as a goal. Think of that as a realistic goal, and you think that this is leading to that. How intense would you get? Right? Some of you that have children and grandchildren would probably get a lot more intense than I. I don't have any kids or grandchildren. I'm intense about it. So this is on the horizon. And without the ETs here and that history and all the stuff they're done, if they weren't even there and we had all the stuff, nukes we've done and all the threats we're making, I would say we're cooked. Just a matter of time. But not now. I see possibilities. That's why I do what I do.
And that's why I love you, Steve. I wanted to, I did go over a little bit of time, so I'm going to bring up, a little bit over what I thought.
I apologize, I really.
You're absolutely amazing. So I am going to bring up, thank you for being, so we'll talk in a minute. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for. Love you, Steve. So there's some new people in the community, and I find them to be very, very intriguing. Nat and Jean Sticko are right here, and Nat is the daughter of a Soviet scientist who has documented from a program that was confirmed to be reverse engineering UFOs. So they have a blueprint for how to reverse engineer UFOs, but again, they're from the USSR, so we know that the USSR had a program. Steve talked about how they turned the nuclear weapons on in the Soviet Union, so I wanted to bring them up and talk about what their work is and how it relates to the UFO community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That on? All right.
Good. Pull it up. Okay. So I want to start with a little bit of an origin, and I hope we still have time for the questions from the audience, but how did you guys come across this, and what is it? What did I just say?
So literally, it's blueprint on how to reverse engineer an UFO.
And who was your father?
Honestly, that was not the man I was introduced to, because I always thought like his day job was plumbing,
Yeah.
right? And I know he did some scientific stuff because, again, he graduated from a good university, right? But yeah, when I was a kid, I had no idea what he was engaged in, right? And when we found those papers, it just amazed me because I was totally unaware of who my father was.
So, can you describe why it's so imperative? Gene, why is this work, and why is this blueprint of reverse engineering a UFO? How does it confirm, anything about the U.S. programs and?
Yeah, I mean, this was the amazing thing, and as you mentioned, outside of binging Ancient Aliens maybe on a weekend, I had no interest in this subject. To be honest with you, I still have very little interest in this subject. But this was dropped in our laps, and as we dove into it, and began the translation and began talking to people and began, looking at the issues, it became so profound for so many reasons, because all of the answers are in there.
Right.
You name the phenomenon, it's in there. I extracted all of the core science, and this is 119 pages of physics. Physics and drawings. You can actually show one of the examples.
The diagram, what I find really interesting is the diagram that she's about to hold up. Now, what does that look like? It kind of looks like what Lazar was describing, huh?
And this is one of the things, I've even taken the testimony from whistleblowers and then done a scientific analysis against the testimony. And again, it explains everything. I have taken the core science, there's essentially 52 domains, as we call them, and compared them against publicly available data, declassified documents, and I found up to a 95% direct correlation between the science and the U.S. programs, just in a general sense. And then when I get into defense, because then I looked at it from, has the government done, have there been any programs that would develop technology that could defend the technology as it's described in the blueprints, and found 6 specific programs.
Right.
So that crosses 75 agencies at about $150 billion a year. And the thing is, and this is what I was saying before, nobody's lying about it. Because when you say, do you have this, we want to know what you have about UAPs, and they say, we don't have anything about UAPs. They're actually 100% correct. They do not. What they have are different scientific topics that are compartmentalized and spread between agencies and contractors, that if you put together into one document, you would have what we have, which is a single unified collection of works that explains how everything operates.
And I forgot to do this. What job did you hold? Who are you?
Before this?
Yeah, so I forgot to why does your opinion matter?
So, I was retired when these dropped into my lap, I'll just say that. My previous background, I started out early in my career. I was a U.S. Air Force security specialist, which was nuclear weapons systems security. And then post-military, I spent my career in the intelligence contracting firm, or intelligence contracting realm. So I've worked with everything from private military companies through Homeland Security, Department of Energy, the CIA, for 17 years contracting through them in various entities. So I come out of the intelligence world, which is, again, more of an interesting coincidence that this would drop on my lap, almost 2 years after I retired.
Yeah, you fell in love with Soviet. I don't want to say Soviet.
Yeah, you can say Soviet because my birth certificate says USSR.
Right, she does.
He fell in love with a Latvian, and so that brought you to discovering her father's work. And it's essentially, to cut through all the BS, it is a guide on how these craft work, what they are doing to manipulate the environment around them. When he says everything is in there, it really does touch on everything. And it's not an easy read. If you don't have a physics background or, a scientific background, it might look like a college physics textbook.
Right.
But
Correct. And we forgot to add it was in Russian originally.
yeah, so it's still being translated. But
And if I can just, on the translation, the depth, and we know there's, we've since had some physicists and scientists, Russian, come forward able to help us, because we've spent a great deal of time just trying to look for somebody to really explain what it was and to help out. But we've gone. I was speaking with somebody about 10 characters in a formula, and he's like, well, this was a mechanical engineer. He's like, I don't get why there's a 3 there. I said, it might not be a 3. It might be the Cyrillic letter for an abbreviation.
Jamie, pull it up. Just kidding.
Yeah, and
Just kidding.
And we don't. But we spend an hour on 10 characters. So when I say, we spent 4 years even using, AI assistance, translation, Nat as a native speaker, to reconcile everything.
Yeah, and I have an engineering degree, like master's, okay, it's IT engineering, but even for me, right, it was just so difficult to grasp, like, the whole depth of that, right? I understand what it is about, right? Yeah, mostly like reverse engineering of UFO, but there are also some social aspects of all that, describing how civilizations evolve, which would answer a lot of questions which potentially people might have, right? But again, as I said, it was also challenging to actually find a bunch of scientists or engineers who understand what it is.
Right.
And I think this is another problem why lots of people, they just don't get it or don't want to get it. Because, if you give it to a scientist who have some credentials and he needs to admit literally, I don't understand that. So that's like a threat to our reputation.
Right.
But no, thank God we had some people who looked at that and they said it's totally legit, and some of it's like confirms what they are working on currently, so that's good at least.
I want to go, I really do. I'm usually pretty nuts and bolts. You guys know this about me. I just had Avi Loeb in the studio, had you guys in the studio, Rizwan Verk. I talked to a lot of really smart people, and I'm kind of nuts and bolts, and I try not to stray too far, but there was a mention that we were going to go through a change as humanity in these papers, and it occurred last year. Can you tell me about this?
You tell better. You tell the story better.
So one of the key near the end of in these papers, just to explain the structure, he speaks in terms of observation. So all of the language is specific observation. It is not, I think, it is, this is what it is. Then he details it through the drawings, through the measurements, and the formulas, then explain how it can work or how it works. And some of even those physics, you can see they are adapted to what it is that they're looking at. So if we take the ancient aliens, theory for a minute, and a lot of what they say, what do they say? Well, the people of the time used the language they had to describe what they saw. So it was dragons and birds and firebirds and this and that. So similarly, he is using the science that he has the language for to explain it, and then go on and tweak that science to say, and this is how it works. So one of the aspects of it is that the craft's operation and navigation relies upon an interface with consciousness. And generally, consciousness is a tuner, and we are tuned, not only to the craft, to one another, to the universe, and it goes on and on. And he's explaining this to whoever the intended audience of this is, because again, these were private notes. He had them in a briefcase probably for 40 years. He references other previous papers that he had submitted to the Russian Duma, which is their parliament. So whoever the audience is, then it's obvious that audience has access to these other levels of government documents. But one of the amazing things was he talks specifically about 2024. And he goes a little bit beforehand and says, in 2020, we begin this process, which I'll try to simply describe as a cosmic DNA download. And in 2024, that is when all the conditions are prime for a bifurcation in society where we have a transition of the polarity of humans between the logical and the spiritual. And it specifically says half of society will experience this right away in 2024, and then the rest goes, and then it extrapolates outward and onward.
And I just want to say to this, if you want to look around, right? Contact in the Desert, I was just there. They said, wow, this year it's the biggest turnout we've ever had. This year in Exeter, this is the biggest turnout they've ever had. Why is that happening?
It's by design. It's
Right.
it is in the blueprint. So when we talk about all the things when it comes to big D disclosure, well, that's
Right.
actually a good phrase, big D disclosure. When it comes to that, that is the beginning again of what is part of human evolution, and even when we experience that, it is still going to be generations upon generations before we are actually advanced to what we would imagine a super advanced space,
Faring
being
civilization.
part of the cosmic community. So it's not like, whenever it happens, it's not like 5 years later we're going to get there. It's going to be like 26,000 years later
Right.
that we are still doing
It's
that.
the seed being planted
It's the seed being planted, right, exactly.
for the later change.
Exactly, but it is, again, it's laid out in such a way, and there is absolutely nothing and no issue that I have confronted this with that can't be extrapolated and explained.
And you guys talk about in the book and in your speaking engagements, you talk about how time is not a straight line. What is time? How do we experience time? And what is the relationship between that?
I mean, I'll just give like a very, very quick note over that, right? And I actually remembered about that a couple of days ago. So my dad, he wasn't very religious, but what he used to say was, the time is God, or God is the time. And then, like, Gene, just go ahead and tell what you find out.
So what you're saying is God is time.
Yes. God
Time
is time.
is God.
And so what I've learned out of these is, this idea, which I think, isn't unusual, that time, linear time as we measure it and as we experience it, is a human construct.
Of course.
And that's how we have survived. It was a survival instinct. When it comes to universal time, it is more secular, and it is more overlapping, that all things only happen in the present. So there is no past, there is no future. There is only the present, and the present is secular.
Right.
And consciousness is the tuner, and each one of us has a different consciousness, or has a different tuner. And so, like I like the phrase, I say, Ty is at, Tyler, 105.7. I'm at Gene, 10.571. She's at, Nat, 104.93. But we're kind of in the same thing and can hear, and that's, all of these phenomena, people, I feel like I've known you forever, or I loved you in a past life, or, I don't know why I don't like this person, I just don't like this person. Right. It's about frequencies and resonance, and that is what time revolves around.
I agree. Well, I agree to the sentiment. Now, I wanted to, because we did push time a little, I wanted to give...
There is no time. I just got through telling you that.
Time is good. Yeah.
Did you not just listen to what I said?
There's a mic. Oh my God.
This has been my experience in this whole community.
So
what do we want? Disclosure. When do we want it? Now. How do we want it? We want it in a classified setting that comes out specifically from this. If it's anywhere else, we don't want to hear it.
Good. There's a mic right up here. If anyone has any questions or wants to talk about their sightings, please come up and I think we have
10 minutes?
10 minutes left. So if anyone wants to ask a question to them, to me, tell me your experience. Let's go.
I have a question for Stephen, actually.
Go.
Is it all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, you talked about You talked about the metaphor for unlocking keys, for unlocking doors. What about the scenario of there are different aliens. What about different aliens siding with different factions of governments, like bad aliens going with Iran, good aliens going with the United States, and advanced alien technology involved in wars in this planet? Is that something to worry about?
Maybe. I think a lot of these kinds of theories and speculations are the result of the truth embargo itself. So for 80 years, the government, there's nothing here. Why are you concerned? And that just opens the door for any possible speculation you want, which is reasonable. And so absence a fundamental truth process, we're going to have a lot of breakouts to different areas. Until we get disclosure, we're not going to be able to get to the bottom of any of that. But one of the advantages in a post-disclosure world is we will start figuring out, okay, now that didn't happen, this is true, that didn't happen. We develop a proper truthful consensus. And that's another reason for disclosure. So I can't address those speculations because it's just not possible to really sort them out yet. But without disclosure, you're not going to. So that's the best I can add to those theories.
Didn't Eric Davis just say in Congress that species? Was that Eric Davis in Congress spoke of 5 different alien civilizations, and that's happening now. I mean, we are so blessed in this community with instant news stories. Any one of these singular hearings would have been the biggest topic in the UFO community 25 years ago, right? Just one hearing, just one member of Congress speaking truthfully and openly about it.
So I'm kind of like the living history vault. I've been watching forever. And now that I've come to realize, going through Gaia, I came on to cosmic disclosure. Mm-hmm. And I see so many things that you're talking about that I've been hearing about. And now I'm so excited, I'm rattling. And so, boy, I wish I could say it right.
Yeah, sometimes.
So when you say frequencies and resonance, I've been thinking that for decades.
Sure.
But it's like, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is not who I am.
Yeah.
No, I understand. And the thing about it, and I say it so many times, and for as excited as I am about this body of work, I think it's important to say, this is about this one craft and how it operates, but it seems consistent across all of the types that are reported and whatnot. But I think the idea and what you're looking for out of this is that this is what this attunement is. And it's why you're here today. You can listen to Joel Osteen, you can listen to Dr. Phil, you can listen to Bashar, right? It's all the same kind of messaging trap that we feel it, we are drawn to it. And, I go back to the blueprint myself, my father-in-law's blueprint, which we published and translated, to sense check all of these things. And so when I hear the same things, I'm like, oh, you're right, but you're right for the wrong reasons. And there is science behind this. And it's, this is the challenge is getting it out. We talked about it earlier. When confronted with this, particularly like the U.S. government, they can't do anything with it because there's some political implications. This is stuff that's come out of Russia. They don't know if this had been previously classified in some capacity. I will tell you, David Grush has this body of work. He's in Burleson's office. Nancy Mace, I sent her a copy, but I know Robert Hastings gave it to David Grush. So it's there. And, whether they're going to use it to ask the right questions is the question.
I'll tell you something. So Bryce Zabel, I don't know if many of you might know him. He co-hosts the podcast Need to Know with Ross Coulthart. After he released his series Dark Skies, he was a spook government agent, showed up to the party, like the launch party, and handed him a napkin or a banknote. And on that banknote, it had some weird symbols, and then at the bottom, it said, sound, light, frequency, the keys to the universe. And he said, lock it away in a vault. It will make sense in 25 years. So,
and incidentally, I've had my visit from the FBI to my house already a couple of weekends ago. So I know I've got something.
But I'm trying to point out too is that the data that I'm collecting, I'm saving things. And like now somebody's going in and taking those certain pieces out of order, messing them up, sending them back, they're missing. And so your data is, and I'm not trusting of the AI. I mean, I was a manager for a tech company, Verizon. And it was kind of like, I know data can be touched all the time. Nothing's really sacred. Everything you touch and key cannot be erased.
right.
And so, like, please, like, I don't know, look
Well,
over your shoulder. And if you've got that feeling.
I mean, you know, all I can say is, you know, just go with the feeling, do what feels right.
Yeah.
Again, you know, don't question it, and because it's probably there for you to do, for you to understand.
And we only have a couple more minutes, so I want to make sure.
Yeah.
But if you up there, stay.
I will. Thank you.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thanks. So I brought this up at a panel earlier, and I guess this is more for Steve, is it?
That's all right. He's so much more popular.
No, but my question is about Three Eye Atlas, and I was wondering if there was any connection there with, as you were saying, within the next 2 to 3 months, possibly some disclosure.
I have some. I just had Avi in the studio.
Yeah.
So Avi was just in my. Not released the episode yet because, but Avi's in the news a lot right now. Avi said to me on the podcast that there is a 20% chance that is prosaic. Think about that. 20% chance it's prosaic. 80% it's something else because it's. But I look for the episode. It's coming out. It's being edited right now.
And I'll just add from our research, based upon, again, the science that we have available to us and comparing the science that's there, that it is more likely has natural components to it. So that key techno-signature, let's say, that at least from the craft I have described, you know, or we have described in the blueprint, does not align.
Right.
So it seems that. So I think we're just about at time, or we got 1 minute.
Question.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. My question was about what do you think, or was the source of the information in the blueprints for your father? Do you think that he worked on them himself? Do you think he got access to that information because he was part of an intelligence network? Or is it something more exotic, like did he have remote viewing capabilities? Or?
So all of the language, as I said, is consistent with observation and direct hands-on.
Okay.
We have had, I had done an analysis trying to identify potentially, you know, where it came from, and coincidentally somebody who had bought the book for a research purpose reached out to me and had reached the same conclusion, that it seems to be, by all the descriptions, it's consistent with what's called Kapustin Yar in Russia, and there was actually a History Channel case about
Yeah,
it.
and we actually found out last week because I got in touch with his girlfriend, right? So that's something I think my mom never mentioned, but his girlfriend knew the last one. So she mentioned that they actually, my father and my mother, they used to live in the so-called Priazorsk region, right?
Kazakhstan.
So Kazakhstan. So it's considered to be like a similar area to Area 51 here in the US. So yeah, that
and he
explains a
kept
lot.
so the Soviet Union fell during this time. So he kept the file because he didn't want it to get into the hands of anyone else. So he was doing his patriotic duty by keeping it, because the Soviet Union, he was waiting for it to come back so he could resume, but it never came back. That's been our time. I look for total disclosure on...
And the website, our website, engineeringinfinitybook.com.
Yes, Engineering Infinity, and total disclosure on all podcast platforms. Thank you so much to the Exeter TV. Love you all.